Nikisha, you're really God's gunslinger.
Oh, quick draw, fast.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid. See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone. Hearts all around, spreading the love, sharing the love.
I mean, it's February.
Day.
So
It is February. I didn't even put that together. I block out Valentine's Day. It's fine. I went to therapy today. Cool. Well, we are talking about our love for horror movies. As always, that is a year-round, continuous thing, even outside of the month of February. And today we are talking about the 2005 supernatural horror legal drama, The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Knock, knock,
Go,
knock, knock.
Emily.
That was me hitting the gavel.
Oh.
Knock, knock, knock. Legal drama.
What a great judge. Yes, I was excited. This is my second time watching this. And when Wikipedia described it as a legal drama, I was like, oh yeah, it really is. Like that is the whole premise of it. So I'm excited just to dive into that as well. So this movie was directed by Scott Derrickson. You've heard us talk about him before. He's done a lot of other things. And this movie stars one Laura Linney, Jennifer Carpenter, and Tom Wilkinson, just to name a few. Jamie is laughing. We'll get to why she's laughing in a second. This film is loosely based on the book The Exorcism of Annalise Mitchell by Felicitas D. Goodman. I'm sorry if I butchered the name, but it is based off of a book, loosely based off of a book of another exorcism, and from a German woman. She was a German woman in the late 1950s. So that was just an interesting thing to note. So heavy spoilers for this movie. And Jamie, please walk us through all of the trigger warnings for this.
Sure. It is a legal drama. So if that triggers you, the courtroom is very heavily featured. But also, that might surprise you, as the title is called The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Right.
There is an exorcism in this. There is some religious themes, some themes around demons and possession.
Mm-hmm.
There are some scary imagery of I don't even know, weird things coming out of eyes and mouths.
Yes.
Like the goop,
blurry
the
faces.
Goop, blurry goopy faces.
Mm-hmm.
Eye goop, mouth goop.
I'll take it.
There is like physical contortions that are happening. There's also references to epilepsy, psychosis, schizophrenia, homicide, because it's a legal drama.
Car accidents.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like a really bad one. Stigmata, death, images of death, references to, I guess, psychosis includes like delusions and hallucinations.
For sure.
And just like religion is very heavily featured in this. So that is your warning. Did I miss anything?
I think there's some self-harm or self-harm is alluded to.
Yes.
And then like those graphic post-mortem images as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on here. And the movie's runtime is about 2 hours. So if that's not for you, just maybe listen to us talk about it. And then after our conversations, maybe watch it after, you know? You can know which parts to fast forward through. So before we get into this, producer Brian has some words for us.
Yes, hi everybody. Hi YouTube.
Hey.
Hello. Today we're talking about the Exorcism of Emily Rose. But if you wanted to find us in other places, you can find us wherever you're on social media at Talk Horror Pod. That is on things like TikTok. That is on Instagram and Twitter. Find us on all those places. We are going to post lots of stuff there, and we are currently posting lots of stuff there as well. Yeah, that's it. Cool. Thanks everyone.
Fantastic. Well, have you guys watched anything new this week, or was Emily at the top of your list?
No, we watched a couple of things this week.
Ooh, tell me.
We watched two things really. We started season 4, the new season of True Detective, which has some supernatural elements to it.
Okay.
We've only watched the first 2 episodes, but so far we're really enjoying it a lot. Super creepy, interesting, a fun mystery, well acted. It takes place in Alaska, like after the sun sets, and when it's all the days of night. Jodie Foster is spectacular in it, as is the rest of the cast. So we're enjoying that. And then immediately, literally after we watched the Exorcism of Emily Rose, we were served up the Last Exorcism to watch, and we were like, cool, let's watch this. We were just like in that exorcism zone. So we watched
Great zone to be in.
Yeah, I had never seen it. Jamie had seen it before, so we watched the Last Exorcism.
Okay.
Have you seen it, Nikisha?
I have not. No.
I think it's a found footage exorcism movie about a preacher who has lost his faith, and he's making essentially a documentary to prove that exorcisms are not real, and like to show that he's been a con man doing these exorcisms for a long time. And he gets a letter from a family being like, come help, and chaos ensues.
Things ensues.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a spectacular movie. The movie is well acted. The pacing is excellent. It's genuinely scary. I just think it's thematically, it's doing some really interesting, unique stuff. Patrick Fabian is in it. If you've watched Better Call Saul, or if you watched, of course, Saved by the Bell, the college years, he plays the professor, Professor Lasky. However, he's great in it. The performances from the girl who's possessed and all that are just spectacular. This would have been a 5-star all-time movie for me, and the ending sucks.
Dang.
You're literally about to hit the runway, and then it just skids, and you're still alive because you enjoyed the flight, but the end just put such a bad taste in your mouth. I would still highly suggest people watch it because it's a spectacular exorcism movie until the last 5 minutes.
Oh, and what a disappointment to just be so engaged for that amount of time, for it to just fizzle out in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, but Nikisha, I think you would really enjoy it, and I'm very interested in hearing your opinion. If you liked the ending, if you didn't like the ending, I think I ended up doing 3.5, 4 stars, but that ending really was just a big fat bummer for me.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put it on my listicle of things to watch. Okay, well, is that all that you guys watched?
I think
so.
Okay.
But there was they announced, just because I'm very excited about this, the Saw X director is directing Saw 11.
Oh, good. Yes.
And there's rumors right now that they are ready to make another Evil Dead movie.
Oh, I saw that.
And Sebastian Vanacek is supposed to direct it. He directed the most recent this movie called Vermin. I believe it was in French.
Okay.
Apparently Sam Raimi saw it and saw something very Evil Dead behind it, if that makes sense. So I think my understanding is that the future of the franchise is that Sam Raimi is going to be handpicking these directors that are up and coming that he thinks can that he wants to see their take on Deadites.
Nice.
So that's interesting there. And then a movie that was supposed to come out in 2022, then 2023 is finally releasing in May the 3rd of 2024. Cuckoo is finally coming out. I know nothing about it. I just know that it's supposed to be really good.
Same.
So we'll see.
Cuckoo is what it's called?
Yeah, Cuckoo.
Cuckoo. It stars Hunter Schafer, Dan Stevens, and Jessica Henwick. And it's supposed
You
to.
had me at Hunter Schafer.
Yeah, people have been raving about that performance. So
yeah, I'm not really sure. I personally have not read anything about it on purpose because I'm just like very excited to like get into it. Yeah, I'm excited about that one.
Yes.
I usually don't do news, but I thought that was like some really exciting stuff in the near future.
Should we do news?
We should.
If you're listening and you like news, let us know. We could do news.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do this. It might not be the week it comes out. Like I think that the week that like this is airing like a week or two after the news, but like doesn't matter. Like I don't care.
Yeah. Especially if no one's like looking at news. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're not looking at it, like here we are. Cool.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let's get into Emily Rose. We got a lot to discuss with this, but we need a plot summary so that we know what the heck is going on.
What's the plot?
Producer Brian. What's happening? Could you please give us the plot summary of this? Be much appreciated.
Yes. I'm going to try my best. As I
It'll be great.
You got this.
But this time I
Thumbs up.
You will.
The fireworks are for you.
Thank you.
It's funny every single time.
Every time.
If you're listening to us, you can't see it. You got to find us on YouTube.
Right.
All right.
Even more incentive.
Yeah. All right, I'm ready.
All right, ready? I'm going to start the 2-minute clock for you. Ready, set, go.
Laura Linney plays a lawyer named Erin who wants to be a senior partner in her firm. She just was she's an excellent defense attorney that just got this like killer off. There's a Father Richard Moore is a Catholic priest charged with neglectful homicide in the death of 19-year-old student Emily Rose. The archdiocese wants him to plead guilty or take the plea deal, and he doesn't want to, so they hire this person, the Laura Linney character. So while they're on the stand, all of the like what happened in the past is told in flashbacks. So we're getting what happened to Emily Rose, where she gets possessed. She's in college. She comes from a very religious family, but she's the first one to like go to college, and at college she's possessed. And so we're seeing all of that. However, the prosecutor is trying to present this as neglect, where she was on a drug that basically was helping with things like epilepsy and schizophrenia, which they think it was. And then essentially they told her to come off of it and to do an exorcism and all of that. However, in the flashbacks, we're also seeing alternate versions of what happened. We're basically seeing the medical version of what happened and the like religious version of what happened. Anyway, in the end, a lot of interesting people come up to the stand, and we'll talk about that. People who deal like with sociology and like exorcisms through history, and then you have like doctors trying to prove that she was epileptic, and then in the end, he is guilty. However, the jury is like, no, we say time served. Because Emily had written a letter that basically said that she saw the Virgin Mary and chose to stay with her suffering. She had stigmata, and at the end of the day, that's what happened.
Yes.
The end.
Good job.
And that's the plot.
It's a lot.
That is what happened.
Yeah,
Yes.
The exorcism doesn't work, and Emily Rose dies, and that's why they're saying that. she's doing that. Also, the drug that she was taking was supposedly like blocking the exorcism from actually like being able to happen.
Yes. Yeah. Which we'll definitely get into all of that as well, because that's such an interesting concept. When we talk about people who are most vulnerable being susceptible to like spiritual attacks and all that stuff. And so having a drug that's kind of adding to that on top of someone who is already, as they say in the movie, hypersensitive, it was just a really interesting take on it.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Oh no, there was also a doctor that attended the exorcism, and he was going to testify, but he's hit by a car before that he can testify. Also, something I didn't mention at all is that there's like a demonic presence surrounding the court case, the trial, and they say that the like witching hour, the demon hour is 3 a.m. So all these like weird, crazy things happen at 3 a.m. to both the Laura Linney defense attorney character. They happen to Emily in the past, and
me when I have to pee in the middle of the night, and for whatever reason I'm waking up at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
I will never forget about this movie.
Exactly. It's so. Let's get into it. Okay, here's our first segment, guys. Likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
But I just have to say, it's so funny because literally the other day, like I follow a lot of astrology pages on Instagram because I think it's fun and I think there's some truth to some things about it. But
you
there
don't
was
have to
just
defend yourself.
You're right. That I was trying to defend myself.
Yeah, don't.
Thank you. But it was so funny because it talked about the hours of 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. and saying that it gets a bad rep because in these movies and you know whatever findings of people are talking about, like that's when the demonic forces are coming out, because like the movie states 3 a.m. is the opposite of 3 p.m., which is when supposedly Jesus died on the cross, right? But what this post was saying,
when he was born.
No, I thought it said when he died on the cross.
Got a fact check.
I want to say that it's when he died. But this post was just saying that 3 p.m. Yes, fantastic. But 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. is when the spiritual realm veil is at its thinnest. And so it was basically just saying, like, if you do happen to wake up in that time, that is the time to maybe do a little manifestation, because then that's putting you intact with like the spiritual world to like manifest like the things that you want in life. So I was like, okay, well, that's like a nice.
Interesting.
So like, if
I
you
like
do
this
the
reframe.
Secret,
yes.
If you do the secret at 3 a.m., it's more likely to work, is what you're telling me.
Yes. Yeah. Then as opposed to, you know, any other time in the day. So Jamie, when you wake up and go pee, have a little manifestation while you pee, and maybe your stuff will be, you know, come true. So as opposed to just like demons coming to like wake you up to interrupt your sleep. I don't like that narrative.
I don't like that either. It's disturbing.
Very much so. All right, let's get into likes and gripes. Jamie, do you want to go first with your likes and gripes and tell us your relationship to this movie and how many times you've seen it? Because I know you've seen it more than once.
So this movie came out back in my phase of I couldn't handle scary movies. This was 2005, so I was in high school.
Yes.
And all of my friends liked scary movies, and they dragged me to see this movie in theaters. And I couldn't even handle the trailer. Like when the trailer would come on TV, I would like get freaked out. So
I remember this trailer for whatever reason. I remember
trailer
because this was my first time watching it, but I remember this trailer.
Yeah, because it was scary. Because they show you it's so interesting, like reflecting on the fact that this really is like a courtroom drama that like has sprinkled in horror and like supernatural elements. Because so much of the trailer, from what I remember, is really focused on the horror elements and not the court case. And so it's like luring you in under this pretense of like another scary supernatural exorcism movie, and then you get like the movie, which I don't think is a bad movie at all. I just think it's really interesting that like that's what they did.
Right.
So you got that. So I saw this movie. I went home, and then I couldn't go to sleep, and I think I ended up like calling a friend who I like tried to convince to like sneak over because I was like so afraid of being murdered by a demon. So this movie just fucked me up. But and I've never forgotten about it because I saw it at that time where I was like still so afraid. And I've seen bits and pieces. Like I don't remember sitting through this movie in its entirety since I saw it in theaters, but I know it's been on TV, so I know that I've like watched parts of it and stuff. And it didn't hit in the same way because I'm an adult person who's not as afraid of these things, but it's still really unsettling at parts.
Sure.
I think that like a huge pro is Jennifer Carpenter's performance, which Nikisha alluded to me giggling before. Because
talk about it.
because the movie that Jennifer Carpenter's also in Dexter. That's probably where most people know her from. But she was also in a movie,
a year
before
you might not know what it is,
came out. That is like the complete opposite of this movie. She was in the movie White Chicks, which is
fantastic movie.
The comedy starring the Wayans brothers, where they play two white women fully decked out. They're wearing like white face, full white body suits, also playing women. Like it's just like to the extreme. This movie, I think I made Brian watch it during the pandemic for the first time. He had never seen it before.
It's a millennial staple, Brian. You never.
Seen it. Now I have. I have now seen it.
Okay. Yes.
So now whenever that what do you call it song plays, I think of this movie. Yes. Terry Crews is amazing in that movie. Yeah, but now I've seen it. I've seen it now.
Okay.
I've seen it.
So Jennifer Carpenter's in this movie, and she plays their friend, and she has this like whole weird scene that like, I mean, a lot of this movie is obviously not going to hold up just based on how I described what the plot of the movie is. But there's a scene that's like also pretty distasteful about like talking about like body image and stuff. And like Jennifer Carpenter's character is like in this relationship with I'm like talking way too much about White Chicks and not about.
I'm obsessed with it. Yes.
But she has also, why do I remember the plot so well? Anyway, she is, I think she's like in a relationship, or like she's constantly chasing after this guy that like isn't totally into her, and so she's like very self-conscious about her body, and they're all shopping, and it's like this scene where like she's in the dressing room and like helping one of the Wayans brothers playing a woman, like trying to get her into an outfit, and then she's having Jennifer Carpenter's character has like this breakdown where she's like calling herself like really disturbing things that have to do with her body image. Anyway, so you get like that performance, and then literally a year later you get The Exorcism of Emily Rose, where she's playing the titular Emily Rose, and her performance is truly like wild, because there's a lot, while there obviously is some like, the silly little CGI moments here and there, she's contorting the shit out of her body, and like that's scary. Her. She is doing that. It's unbelievable to watch. It's so disturbing. Like that that is what really scared me as a kid, is like just the way that she is moving her body. And it's like I'm pretty sure most of it is not a stunt double. From like what I remember reading is that like it's truly her doing all of this work. And I just think that's like, I just think that's remarkable. And it boggles the mind between these performances of like something that's just so wildly different, and like how she was able to make that work with her body.
Well, that's one of my likes of this movie. One of my major gripes about exorcism movies in general is that when the demon possesses you, it's doing things to your body that you can't revert back, like spinning your head all the way around, or like breaking your bones and like twisting you and turning you. To me, this movie, everything that happens to Emily Rose's body does not feel like it feels like that is a physical limit that the body can actually hit and then still retain its like bone structure or its flexibility or whatever the case may be. And I really appreciated that about this movie because I was never taken out in the exorcism scenes, which is a huge problem with me in exorcism movies in general. Also, I will preface this with saying that exorcism is not the subgenre that scares me. I am not drawn to exorcism subgenre movies. Like if they're well made, sure, like The Exorcist and some and on like The Last Exorcism until the last 5 minutes. Like when it's well made, it's awesome because it's balancing these religious themes and it's fascinating. But that doesn't scare me. But
the religion itself doesn't scare you.
No.
Right.
And taking over your body, like that doesn't scare me. But like just to go back to what Jamie's saying, like Jennifer Carpenter doing these things and making it feel like this could happen to a human body really kept me in this movie, especially in those flashback scenes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Same.
She is like, so apparently what they did was they built a puppet with the body contortions, and she saw the puppet and she was like, I think I can do that. And this is like from Scott Derrickson. He said it took her maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but she did it. Like it is all her doing those contortions herself.
It makes a difference.
Her face is really disturbing in like most of those scenes that you see her. Sure. And apparently another anecdote from Scott Derrickson, she contorted her face so horrifically that the MPAA originally gave it an R rating. And he was forced to edit the scene and because he wanted the PG-13 rating. And so he got the PG-13, but there is an unrated version.
There is an unrated version of this?
Apparently there is, yeah.
Oh,
I've never seen
that.
Yeah, I would love to see that. But
man.
Yeah, so like major props to Jennifer Carpenter for like the biggest 180 performance year to year.
From Shamu to this. Because that's what she called herself in the movie.
That is what she calls herself, yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, she's so standout in this. And I think especially because, again, you're going into this based on the preview, expecting one thing. You get something kind of different. And then the scenes that you're getting with the Emily Rose character is not necessarily, it's not all of what you're seeing. And I don't actually know what the breakdown is off the top of my head of like how much is actually, flashbacks versus what we're getting in the present. But I think it's just so important that like she's so effective in those scenes. And that's what like moves the story along, because without her, then you're just watching you're watching like Law and Order. And so like, it's really, there's so much that's like hinging on her performance, and she more than pulls it off. And that again, like I saw this in 2005, like I continue to think about her performance in this movie to this day. It's just like, it truly blew me away, and it still blows me away because like, obviously, yes, there are contortionists who do a lot of this in current movies. I mean, we were joking before about our favorite villain, Gabriel. But in Malignant, there's a lot of body contortioning that's happening, but like it's usually someone else. So it's just like, it could have been really dangerous for her to do this potentially with no prior training. And like, who knows, like, I don't know what kind of like prep she did beforehand, but like to put herself in that position is wild. It's just like,
and just to add to that, I'm sure as an actor makes a difference if you are in those positions screaming and, doing your lines, as opposed to you doing it, I don't know how they would like voice over it and then like have the, contortion like stuff over it. But I think that's why it adds to her performance so much, because she is the one doing those things, as opposed to like, what is it?
Someone else.
ADR, when you have to come in and like redo lines like in a studio room, you know, but someone else is physically doing it. So I think that really just kind of adds to why the performance was so good.
But yeah, she's a star in this movie. So I have to shout that out.
Yes.
The jump scares scared me in 2005. They're not really as scary upon later reflection. Partially because I knew when they happened, because again, this like movie was like seared into my brain when I saw it. But I think looking back, like the goo face that like most of the people, like all their faces start melting when she like when you're seeing it from her perspective of like starting to see things. It's not that scary, but when you're however old I was in 2005, it was really
15.
scary. Yeah, when I was 15, I didn't like it one bit. I think people know my opinions on big mouths, and my opinion is I don't like them.
There you go.
So like the droopy melty like thing, it still freaks me out. One thing I'll say, so I think that like there's some really great actors in this and good performances, but I think one of my problems is that like the script and how people are talking to each other needs a lot of work, because I don't think that the things that sometimes they're saying is not what a human person would say.
Yes. To your point, I wrote in my notes that this read more like a play than a movie to me. And I think it was because of the dialogue and how they were saying the dialogue, especially just when the lawyers were just at the bar talking to each other. Like that just, it seemed a little more put on, as if it were a play happening, as
their dialogue held a lot of thematic weight, and it was like a little bit like nail on the head, as opposed to like having conversations, and a lot of that information is in subtext. Like there was very little subtext in this movie.
But I just think that like there was a line where someone says, "Objection, Your Honor," and they were like, "On what grounds?" And they were like, "How about silliness?" I'm like, no one's gonna say that in a courtroom. That's fucking wild. It was like stuff like that. There was another line where where the older woman was testifying earlier on, and she was remarking on like in the beginning when Emily had contacted her, like she had a relationship with her. Was she like a neighbor? I don't even remember who she was, but she was just a person,
she
like
was
an older
their
woman.
Babysitter. That,
okay, it was just like someone that she had a close relationship with that wasn't her family. And the woman was like, she woke me up from a deep sleep at 4 a.m. And I was like, first of all, why do you fucking remember that? And second of all, like, why are you recounting it in that way? Like, people don't talk like that. So
like that line to me, like, even if the prosecutor like coached you on what to say in terms of like, I was awoken at 4 a.m. The disconnect for me there is that this actress, the real life actress, is doing these lines as if like she's remembering it on the spot, like, and like this is her experience, the character's experience, versus like the actress being like, I have practiced this with the prosecutor. It has to come out a little bit more robotic. That's such a good point, Jamie.
Yeah, I just was like, nobody's talking like that. Also, like in real court, the questions are usually more narrow. Now I become really aware of it in older things, because I feel like they've kind of remedied some of that as like Law and Order continues, and like other other shows where they like feature courtroom settings where
Yes.
sometimes, not all the time, there's still a lot that's super fake, but like they're like when a lawyer is asking a question, that's not like then giving this person the opportunity to just like tell a long-winded story. That's like not what's happening. They're asking like a very specific question. And like a lot of times it's like a yes or no. Yeah. And it's not to kind of like, depending on whose side it is, they want to limit the scope or they want to like open up the scope to a particular thing. But no one's like, yes, I remember she called me at 4 a.m. and then she told me that she saw like that's not happening unless they're explicitly like, okay, like then what happened, which again would be a specific follow-up question. So it's more of just like a slight annoyance of like the courtroom of it all is like a little performative, you know, for the sake of a movie, but it feeds into that same like slight annoyance of like, oh, the script really isn't that, or like just how people are speaking isn't the best. But again, despite that, I think like my favorite thing about this movie is that it presents like these parallels to this one experience where we ultimately don't really know what happened, and the way that they're presenting each side feels reasonable, like depending on what you believe in, but that's part of what the movie is about. And I really like that you're like, they show you the scenes where they're presenting it from the perspective of like Emily is possessed, and then they go back and they're like, okay, but like this could also be explained by an epilepsy diagnosis, by like psychotic symptoms that she's experiencing because of her epilepsy diagnosis. So and they like actually revisit the scene, so it's like instead of her just like contorting her body, you see her like having a seizure. So it's really interesting that like the way it's presented, similar to like how they're presenting it to the court, like literally this is a legal drama, so you're seeing both sides from the prosecutor and the defense, but it's the way that they actually like do it, I feel like is really effective. And like obviously for us as the audience, getting to see both things is like does present a good amount of doubt, right? Like, you know, when you get both perspectives, if the audience, let's say, is like in the position of the jury, which like is kind of what it feels like watching this movie, that it's instilling enough doubt in you, or enough for you to kind of question and evaluate like, okay, what really is real? And like that's what I feel like makes this a good movie, is the way that they're able to present it. And it's not like, well, yes, there's still the scenes outside of the courtroom where like Laura Linney's waking up at 3 a.m. and like spilling a glass, and then does she step in it? Like what happens there? Why does she put it on the ledge and then take a step? Like you don't know where that glass just fell.
It's dark. What are you doing?
You didn't turn on the light, which I also think is weird. Who walks around? Does anybody actually walk around their house with no lights on in the middle of the night?
Well, the power went out. That's why.
We all have like devices and like, you know,
you're right.
Flashlight. Like I don't buy it for 1 second. Anyway,
that you're not going and finding a flashlight. Okay, I get it. I got you.
Silly little gripe. But so like with the exception of the, you know, the scary things that are visiting her and the priest who's in the jail, that like I think that it's trying to say like it could be this or it could be that, you know, we got enough information to potentially like, you know, either sway you in either direction or like just make you uncertain about like what's the right answer. And I like that it poses those questions in like I think a pretty thoughtful and like mostly grounded way.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Back to Jennifer Carpenter's performance, the differences between the medical explanation and the religious explanation don't work without her physical performance and her being able to show the physical differences between the two things happening.
Yeah, I agree with that. with that, Brian, this was your first time watching it. I should have asked you first for your likes and gripes. Go ahead and give it to us.
Give
Yeah,
it to us.
so I'd never seen this movie before, but now I have.
Woohoo.
Uh, The Exorcism of Emily Rose is the best episode of Supernatural Law and Order ever. You have
That is what it is. Yes.
Right? You have
Yes.
mean-spirited attorneys. You have ambitious yet hopeful attorneys that learn something. You have a deeply engaged jury. You have these like very theatrical opening and closing statements. You have a no-nonsense judge. You have gaps in courtroom logic. But it's like always really fun to watch. And you know, it's a good time. Bum bum. I really, yeah, I enjoyed this movie a lot. Some of my likes for this movie are I think it's very believable that Emily Rose would be the character that was possessed. Because I think I think in a minor way it's an allegory for college anxiety. Going away to college for the first time and just having that like homesickness and allowing it to kind of like take you over, and then she goes back home. Like, I don't know if that's like the point of it, but I think that's there. Um, Again, I agree with Jamie that they showed the faith in the medical versions. I love that. I think the cast is excellent and believable and doing a good job of trying to make the dialogue as believable as possible. I think this is really well structured. I think this has great momentum and pace. I never ever felt like I was like getting bored or was slowing down. And I will say that it was a pretty generic setup for the Laura Linney character. Like, she wants to become partner. She just like got this like potential criminal off, like that type of thing. But what I really liked about the movie is that halfway through, the person that she defended and got off of their charge ended up killing again. And I thought I think that it was a great character layer, like a plot point to add more character layers to that character. You know, to kind of show her you know, her desperation in the middle, her questioning her own belief system of what she does. I really like that. I love the idea that the demons are, so I'm on the fence on this one. I love the concept that the demons don't want to be outed in this court case, so they're kind of like, you know, they're around the court case. They're doing like wicked things to the prosecutor, excuse me, the defender, Laura Linney, and the doctor, and the priest. Like, I like that. On the other hand, like, maybe some of that was taken too far. If we're supposed to, for me, if we're supposed to believe, for me, this movie leans more heavily into the Emily Rose was you know, possessed, and obviously, like, that's the point. It's still a horror movie, but I do think that because there's this like haunted haze, if you will, this demonic presence around the case, that, like, you know, everyone's waking up at 3, and like there's just too many coincidences that this movie leans more into that. I'm not that's and which is fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe if you were also waking up at 3 consistently to pee.
Or if you found a locket that had Brian Plofsky on it.
Yeah, like that was a bit much for me. That was a bit much for me, not because of the serendipitous like aspect of it, but because like it was just maybe it was the serendipity. Like, it was just a little bit too much. I think there are ways that it could have been shown that she was being guided in the right way without like going all in on that. I think likes Campbell Scott as the like people's prosecutor was excellent. But one of my gripes is his tie knot was awful in every single scene. His tie knot was just a little small, like little.
Didn't even notice.
It was terrible. We got a big shout out to the DSM-5, which we got a well, just the DSM. I don't know if they listed the number, but we got a
no. They just said the DSM.
I don't think the 5 actually came out.
Existed,
then.
Yeah. So we got that DSM.
2013 is when the DSM 5 came out. So it was DSM 4 TR text revision.
Woo woo.
I think that there was some. I I have likes and gripes. I'm glad that sexism was a part of this in terms of her trying to get like the next step in the
partner
to become a partner.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it was like, even though this movie came out in 2005, it feels very like late 90s, like telephoned in sexism.
Yes.
So we have that. I really liked the drugs wouldn't let the exorcism work based on the conversation that they were having. And man, I want to hang out with that anthropologist for a day and just talk about everything that she knows. She just seems so cool. I want to hang out with her and talk about exorcisms through time and like people's belief in like demons. I think that was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I really that was a powerful cat to knock down that priest, if you ask me. Like that cat just like bounced off his chest and he went flying backwards.
Oh my gosh.
The horses were freaking out. I really liked that. I think that added a lot of drama to that exorcism scene. I think Jamie pointed this out. I think it's funny that Laura Linney's boss, his name was Carl. Shout out
Carl.
to well, not even that.
Love Actually.
Love Actually. Carl's the name of the guy in that.
The guy she's in love with.
Yeah,
Dang.
there was so much. Yeah, there was so much drama with the firm. I loved it. We didn't. I like that we didn't see her beat herself because they allude to Emily like hitting herself and beating herself, and we only seen little bits and pieces of that. We didn't need to see that, to be totally completely honest. And I'm glad that we didn't have to see that because we knew how it ended. It was just about like, why did it end like that? I thought they had great closing statements. And my last and kind of a gripe is if any exorcism movie ends with like two people like, I don't know what I'm going to do next, like that type of a thing. If you don't bring in Russell Crowe from the Pope's Exorcist to like team up with them, I need a like exorcism like Avengers movie. That's
just
what I
all the ones that survived the things.
I need like the nun, not Valak, but like the nun, like the good nun.
Yes,
in the
the actual
movie.
nun from the movie.
Yeah, the
yes,
actual nun, not Valak.
Uh-huh.
We obviously need to have Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga.
Literally was gonna say yes, Patrick Wilson.
Well, we also need Russell Crowe. We also need the two from this movie, or Tom Wilkinson's character and maybe Laura Linney to be their lawyer. Like I need all of that right now immediately. That's what I need. I need them going around and just exercising people. I think that would be great. My gripes with this movie are that it is a generic law narrative that sets it all up. It gets more interesting as I mentioned halfway through. This is another weird one. Everyone is like shocked at that post-mortem picture. Wasn't that bad.
It wasn't. Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't. I think I needed something more gruesome, to be totally honest. And I know you needed a PG-13 rating, Scott Derrickson, but like, I just wasn't that. Maybe it's because of all the horror movies we're watching. But like,
I literally was going to say that. Yeah.
For a horror movie, it needed to be more shocking, in my opinion. I think the 3 a.m. motif was a bit much for me. Again, leaning into, I like the concept, but like leaning too much into like, they're all waking up at 3 a.m. and are watch stopped at 3 a.m. Like all that was too much for me a little bit. If it's not too much for me in a movie that's exclusively an exorcism, but if you're trying to be medical and religious on both sides of it, then I don't think you should have been as definitive on either side. To me, the clock stopping at 3 a.m. for everybody was too definitive.
I get that.
I'm quoting Jamie. Nobody calls the DSM the Bible of diagnosis. and
I did hate that.
And I recognize that this was a part of the dramatic nature of him presenting it to the jury, but I thought that was really funny. Tons of gaps in the courtroom scene, but that's just par for the course for movies like this. Like all of the like objections and the questioning, like there was just like a lot of like, okay, but I'm into it. That doll Can we talk about Emily Rose's doll?
How
Brian got jump
creepy is that
scared
doll?
by the doll. Like
That
straight
doll
up
was
got jump scared by that doll, Brian.
That doll
did.
was. I know you have doll trauma, Nikisha. So I'm sorry to
So
bring it up.
much.
We probably should have put that in the trigger warnings. Creepy dolls. But that was a creepy doll. That was a real.
I
creepy
forgot.
doll.
I forgot.
With bangs like what's her name from Scream? Why were those bangs? Courtney Cox
Oh yeah, Courtney
bangs.
Cox's Scream 3 bangs.
Yes.
That
Yes.
doll absolutely had Courtney Cox Scream 3 bangs. No question.
Golly.
You know, I was excited once they got to the exorcism, but I think this movie should have done a better job of building up to it. Like, I feel like it wasn't. I think the scene was awesome with the tape recorder, and then we brought back to the barn sequence and all of that. I think it was really well done, but I don't think the movie built enough to that. I think it needed to treat it more on a pedestal, like we can't wait to see the exorcism, even though that's the name of the movie. I just think there could have been more build towards that moment. I'm shocked that there wasn't more media until the end of the movie. I feel like only until the jury came to a decision, the media like wasn't involved before that. Realistically, like maybe there was one TV station that had it on, I forget, but like I just feel like if like you're putting religion on trial, that like the media would be all over that essentially.
For sure. Yeah,
man, the priest really didn't help himself much, did he? But I understand that was not the point.
he had a goal.
Yeah,
He had a mission.
Yeah, and then I'm still on the fence about this. Narratively, the end with the letter and like saying that she was going to be sainted and that like she saw Mother Mary, not all of it. Some of it was a bit too much in one direction for me. And that's not that. And to me, that's less of a religious thing and more of a, if you're trying to balance this out in some way, I maybe needed that to be a little bit more vague, but I guess it is vague realistically because like if you believe, you might believe it. If you don't believe, then like that's just all mumbo jumbo, you know. But again, it's Emily's account of that. So she's religious, she believed in it, so that's all that matters, and I totally get that. So that's why I'm on the fence, because part of me thinks it works narratively, part of me thinks it doesn't.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah,
because even for me as a religious person who like gets freaked out and all that stuff, the narrative does in that scene move it more to like a 60-40 as far as like pushing the narrative of like Christianity in a general sense than it just being like, you know, a horror movie courtroom exorcism, like 50-50 with the 50-50 of how much they talk about medical to spiritual like ratio, you know.
Yeah, and that might not be the point, and I may have been looking for different things in this movie. I still really liked it, don't get me wrong. But that was something there. Two more gripes that I put at the end that I forgot about. She was 19. So she's an adult, a consenting adult in the eyes of the law. If she agreed to go off the meds, that's her decision. Like, and part of me feels like they should be like, and maybe it's because like they didn't really make it in this movie, but you could make the argument that like she was coerced off and she wasn't in her right mind and like not a sound mind.
He was charged with negligent homicide, which is a criminal charge brought against a person who through criminal negligence allows another person to die.
Okay. So then shouldn't the family be on trial too?
I forget what they ended up saying about that, because they said something.
Oh, they did. They
kind of
yes,
let it go, and I forget why.
Right, because they said that.
Oh, they said
the priest.
They gave him the authority to make
exactly
the decisions, but that's not like a. You're right, Brian. Like that's not a good enough reason, because like unless they like signed legal paperwork to suddenly make the priest like her guardian. Right, or like whatever. Like it doesn't make sense where they were like, yeah, sure, whatever he said goes. Like, and then they'd be off the hook. That's not that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. a lot of that just like did rub me the wrong way in terms of that. It's still engaging stuff, but that's a part of the Law and Order of it all. That like, okay, sure, I'll
Law and
buy
Order
into
of
this.
it
Yeah,
all.
the Law and Order of it all.
Which is funny because the book that it's based off of, apparently the family and the priest were charged. But I guess they just decided to not have that in the movie. Yeah.
Okay. So I have some questions. You know what? I'll save my questions until after Nikisha, you do your likes and gripes. But
Yeah.
that's everything for me. My quotes. He's no choir boy in the courtroom. That's my first one.
That goes back to my like nobody talks like this.
Yes. My second one was waking me out of a deep sleep at 4 in the morning. Thanks,
Mm-hmm.
babysitter. And then my favorite line in this whole movie, no question, with a bullet, pun intended, is "You're really God's gunslinger." That was my favorite line. I loved it. You're really God's gunslinger.
So,
God.
So extra. Okay, my lesson grabs will be quick. This is my second time watching this movie. I think the first time was also just like a pandemic watch where I finally was like, oh, I'm going to sit down and watch this movie.
Sure.
And also because even though I enjoyed horror movies even at a younger age, I hated exorcism movies just because of my upbringing. So I always stayed away from those. So I remember when this came out, like Jamie said, in high school in the trailer, and I was like, absolutely not. Why would I ever watch anything of this? But hey, girl from White Chicks, cool to see you in this too. Awesome.
Nikisha, just to reiterate, can you just like one or two sentences on why exorcism movies like really do freak you out?
Yeah, because the church has a great way of making you fear death and hell at any given moment. And so the idea that you already get fear from the church. So it's like, I don't want to have fear watching a movie about actual demons like taking over someone's body when they talk about that in church all the goddamn time. So
Sure.
that just like, I can't do it. I'm over it. It's kind of like if you were like a cop, but then you're watching like cop movies, it's like you already deal with that on a daily basis. So like, I'm not gonna watch it.
Sure.
So yeah, that just, it steered me away from it. Even the ones that are like good wins in the end and, you know, God prevails and, you know, the light always wins. But it was still like, I don't want to watch someone be possessed by a demon because that's just reiterating, you know, the things in my mind.
Sure.
But when I watched this movie, I thought, again, her performance was great as Emily. I think that really makes it. I also enjoyed, like you all said, that it was a combination of the courtroom and the exorcism. The soundtrack at the beginning, I love throughout this, more so the second go around. I was really into the music that they composed for this. I thought it's an interesting perspective of charging a priest with murder because that's not really ever seen either in an exorcist movie. So I just thought that's an interesting concept in general, to be putting the priest on trial. I said, come on, headshot. When they said this was Emily, she was 19. And I was like, that's a great headshot there.
That too.
I love how we only get snippets of the exorcism and not the full story. Like if they were going to do the whole exorcism at the beginning and then like break it down as the movie goes. I like that we are finding out what is happening in real time as the trial is going on. I just really appreciate that. I said Jennifer's screaming is fantastic. Like
so good.
Like, how did she not like destroy her vocal cords?
Yeah. How? I don't understand how she has not, because it was just so guttural and amazing every time. I just absolutely, I loved it. They're piercing and it was so good. And we already talked about the contortions, but I said that was also amazing. I like the dark tones of this movie. Like it's very dark and there'll be like one space where there's light. Like when she is, the defender lady, Laura Linney's character, is going back to bed and everything is dark except for like the spot where she's about to go lay down. Like I just really liked how the movie used dark tones and the color tones. It was really effective for me.
Yeah, I think
also
Derrickson does that really well. Just in Black Phone, in not Insidious, Sinister, even in his VHS segment about the videotapes and stuff. Like, I think
Yeah.
his light and dark direction is lighting is usually pretty spot on.
Yeah. It just makes it so much more effective. It just adds to, because like we've probably discussed way before, because we were talking about James Wan and his directing. It's like if you can only see a certain part of the picture, it's more scary because you don't know what the whole picture is.
Yeah,
And that goes with you also like seeing from the first person perspective, like you are seeing what they see, so you don't know what fully is happening. And I just really love that in movies. I also like how we don't really know how the exorcism started with her. It's like there wasn't a Ouija board, or like she wasn't dabbling in like the occult things. It just like happened, She just went to college and they decided, we're gonna possess you. So there you go.
Sure.
Enjoy, have fun. The black eyes did get me in the classroom scene, maybe because I forgot how it comes about. Like I knew it was there, but it just got me this time, and I was like, "Oh damn!"
Oh yeah, that's the one that I remember. That's the one I remember from the trailer. That like scared the poop out of me.
Yeah,
And
I was also
CG was
listening with
pretty good.
headphones in, so it's just like,
Oh, you were. Oh,
yeah,
just like
the loud noises. Yeah. Yeah, sound design was great. I really love the sound design in this. I liked the frozen contorted position when her friend like found her on the ground when he
my
was like
God.
staying with her.
I that's in my likes, and I didn't understand what it meant, so I didn't mention it before. But Nikisha, you saying that's the scariest part of the movie for me. When her friend wakes up, when he brings her back to the dorm, and he wakes. You're referencing that moment, right?
Yes, yeah.
And he just like sees her on the floor. Like, to me, that's the scariest moment of this whole movie by far.
Yes.
Oh man, I forgot about it. I'm so happy you brought that up. That was such a good moment.
Would you stay in your friend's house if you woke up in the middle of the night and they weren't in bed, and then you looked down and you saw them and they were contorted on the floor?
I would be calling someone to come and join for sure. I'm not going to be in this alone, but I would also try to like get her to wake up, because like her eyes were just like wide open and frozen. It's like a deer, like a dead deer on the side of the road. It was just so
it was
creepy
real freaky.
Yeah. But I loved it. I thought maybe just because in the mood that I was in when I watched it, it felt a little slow at some parts. I was just kind of like, okay, let's like keep going. But I like that at the end, and this is my last thing. I like that the ending, he was found guilty, and I think it just fits like both worlds of like helping in what am I trying to say? Like understanding that he probably did aid in a homicide if you're looking at it from a specific point of view, but also like realizing that you can see that he was trying to help her, even if that help was not good help. So I just was really happy with the fact that he was found guilty, but then it was time served. I thought that was a good ending for everything that was presented in this. So.
And then the other side of that, the gripe is a jury can't do that.
Right.
Make a recommendation. I don't know if they can. I think it depends. I don't.
But not in that manner. The
not
jury number one can't like
and be
stand
like,
up.
We just think it should be time served.
By the way,
right.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do have some questions for you if you're complete with your likes and gripes, Nikisha.
Yep.
So this movie believes that college is the devil.
Basically.
Did you? And I think I know your answer based on this. Did you feel like Emily needed more of a character to get into this movie, or do you think that us learning who she is through other people was enough?
It was enough for me, I think.
Yeah, because I guess like, do we really need to know like who she is? Her story is more like what happened to her.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with both of you on that. I just was curious.
Yeah.
And then my bigger question here is, The Exorcism of Emily Rose is based on a true story. Obviously, like very like lightly based on a true
Right.
story. When something is presented in its marketing as based on a true story, does that interest you more, or do you kind of ignore it, like it doesn't matter to them, it doesn't matter to me? Or a third one, like does it turn you off because like you probably know it's been like tweaked and it's just a marketing scheme? Like which of those three or all of them do you kind of feel towards that kind of marketing ploy or narrative around a movie?
It annoys me more now.
Interesting.
Only because I do feel like, at least with this, if you like look at the story, like it's based on a real story of someone who underwent 67 exorcisms the year before she died.
In 1 year, yeah.
And her family and the priest were convicted of negligent homicide. And she was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis and have it there's enough where it's like, oh, this like they like really did draw from reality.
Sure.
There are still things that are made up, but like this feels like one of the last things that like the based on the true story I feel like works versus other things where it's like based on a true story because I had like a dream about something and like thought it would, make for based on that's not a true story. That's like something that you made up in your head, which in turn is still fake. Like I feel like more often than not, or wait, what about the like from the twisted mind of like Chris Rock, like rumor that was going around about Spiral? Do you remember that?
No.
Like that there was this whole rumor for the longest time when right before Spiral came out that like Chris Rock approached Twisted Pictures and was like, I have a great idea for Saw that like came to me and I just think that like I should be the one to do this. And like then afterwards it was like, no, they just like saw it, like him and like one of the producers from Twisted Pictures like ran into each other at an event and he was like, hey, I haven't been to one of your movies, like you owe me one. And then they were like, okay, I guess you're starring in Spiral now. Like, yeah. I just think that like I think there's so much marketing bullshit that I mean it works, but the thing itself also has to be good. And when the marketing overshadows the thing, then it's like, what's the point? I don't think that in this case the marketing overshadowed the actual movie. And I think that they're closely related enough where it's like, oh, this does feel like a really like solid adaptation of this real life event that happened. So that's my perspective.
Sure. Nikisha?
Yeah, I think I'm indifferent about it. I definitely, if it says based on a true story, that doesn't make me run to go and see it.
Whoa, Nikisha!
I just want.
I need this now.
Right.
I gotta see it.
I gotta know exactly what this. No, I just like Jamie mentioned. I just want the movie to be good. So whether it's based off of something or not is not what interests me. It's the quality of whatever you're presenting to me. It's going to be what keeps me there. And then if it's good, I'm going to want to look up and be like, how is this related to blah, blah, blah. And then in that case, if it has nothing to do with it, well, it was still a good movie. So I don't care if you want to say it was based off of this, but it was like a dream, but I just want the movie to be good. So I don't really care about it.
Cool.
How about you?
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
If the movie's good, the movie's good. I think that there are nuances to it. If you're doing somebody in real life dirty by changing their story, I think that could potentially impact my enjoyment of the movie, even if it's an excellent narrative and good storytelling. But in the end, it doesn't matter to me.
Like thinking about older, I also feel like in the present, it's a bad marketing ploy that often overshadows the thing. But I feel like if you look in the past, like Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Silence of the Lambs, where it's not necessarily that the whole story is like, oh, we're adapting this story for this movie, but they're pulling bits and pieces from like real murderers and like applying that to inspire their thing and then saying based on a true story. So like they can, like, the framing is questionable, but all of
For
those
sure.
movies obviously are good. And so, like, that, I think maybe for the time, I imagine it has a lot to do with the time period and like compelling people to the movie theater, especially for horror, which like there's just so much of a mixed reaction and like so much shock value back then that like that then's really going to stick with people in a different way. I feel like now it's really just overused and like there's not that much thoughtfulness behind it. Like they're
Yeah.
just used to using it as a ploy now, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work, I think, as effectively as like historically it has.
You know who does based on a true story really well? Not to be funny, but Law and Order, when they say like ripped from the headlines, like I kind of
They
like,
literally, I know like real stories that I've read in news reports, and then all of a sudden it's like in an episode of SVU, and it's like the turnaround on this is really fast.
yeah, but I like the term ripped from the headlines because it's not saying that it's based on a true story. It's saying that it's taking something that is socially in the zeitgeist at that moment
Yes.
and creating their own narrative on it. So it resembles the headline, but they're not saying that we're doing like Bernie Madoff exactly, or they're not saying
Right.
that we're doing like this like political scandal exactly. We're basing it on that. I don't know why. Maybe to rip from the headlines is like maybe that's just good marketing, but I like it.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Anyone have any other likes and gripes before we move on? All right. Let's get into our next section. Brains. Taste it, taste it. I just like it. Okay, Jamie. So many questions, but I'm going to start you off
Hit
with
me.
a doozy. So in the movie, the defender of the priest is agnostic, is what she claims herself to be. So she is not a believer, but is working with defending someone whose whole premise and the whole defense is based off of their religion and faith and such. So my question to you is, how do you as a therapist go about navigating a client whose issues might stem from religious beliefs that are different from yours?
Ooh, good
Good
question.
question.
Good question.
Ooh, yay.
I mean, I think a lot about this because I work with people who like I haven't necessarily lived their experiences or like share identities or like sometimes values. And I think that it there's like a lot of this came up a lot in like my trainings and things. And I think that it can still be like problematic for different reasons. And I also do think that sometimes people still are seeking out a therapist that does understand that experience, like having been
Yes.
through it or like share an identity. So like for me, my philosophy is I don't want someone to feel like they have to come in and like teach me about like something that I have not experienced or lived through. I feel like my skill set around like building a relationship with someone and like having unconditional positive regard and empathy for someone allows me to like do the work I'm doing even if I don't have the same background or share the exact same identity. Like that's what I feel like part of the like challenge of being in this role is like it's not about me. Like somebody might be talking about things that like don't resonate with me, and I have to like compartmentalize my own stuff so that like I can do the work for them that they need. And so like I think about that a lot. And I say that to people whenever I do like phone consults, if people are asking specific things. I also have no problems like being transparent around like my identity and things like that. Like if someone's like, "Oh, I'm looking for, like like a a Latin therapist or something like that," like I will share that like I'm half Puerto Rican. So like I have an understanding of like some of the cultural like background and experiences that come from that. Like, oh, I'm
Yes.
looking for like someone that understands like ethnic and or religious Jewish backgrounds. Like, I understand that. So, you know, I think that there absolutely is value in also seeking out a therapist that does potentially like represent your same identity, because there is this underlying subconscious, like, they'll get me, they'll understand me. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's the fit that you have with the therapist, to me, is the most important factor to what you get out of therapy. And also there's like research into it being the biggest indicator of like progress or like success in therapy, if you will. And I say both of those with
Yeah.
quotes. So like, I do think that the relationship is the most important thing over like techniques and approaches and modalities and like all the letters after your name and whatnot. But like, it requires a lot of self-reflection on my part, self-awareness, like me doing work on myself to be able to then do exactly what I described. Because like, it's hard sometimes to navigate that. And like, again, I don't want to put someone in a position where it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then that client has to then do work of like explaining their experience that I don't
Right.
understand. And that's not what I like want people to do. Sometimes people are like, no, I need to give this context to you. And it's like, yeah, sure. Like, you can, but like, I don't always need like that specific thing. And I don't want that to then be this burden where someone feels like they have to like go out of their way to like explain pieces of themselves.
Yes.
Where it's not like in support of like actually supporting them.
Yeah.
So all of that to say that like, I think it depends on what the client feels comfortable with. It also I think depends on like what the focus is. So like, my focus is not necessarily religion, and like there's so many subsections of that. There's like therapists that focus on religious trauma. There's therapists that focus on like, you know, that like market themselves as like, I'm like a therapist who's also Christian, so like I understand and like can bring that perspective into this space. So like, everything really runs the gamut in terms of like whatever type of therapist you're looking for. But for me personally, I feel very strongly, and part of that is because like I've worked in so many different spaces, and I view that as like I've had like the privilege of being able to work with in so many different spaces, like across socioeconomic statuses, across like you know, like within the criminal justice system, like so many places with so many people, that the biggest thing that I've taken away is like that I have the capacity to work with anyone as long as they're cool with me. Like, as long as they are down to like want to work with me and like feel comfortable with me, and that's the most important thing, then like I am here and I'm like ready to take that on. But like, it's not my place to force my stuff on other people. That's not therapy. And that requires that the therapist has done a lot of their own work to not let that stuff come up and get in the way.
Yeah.
So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Oh, absolutely. Times a million. It definitely is just about the first off connection, which is nice that you have consultations, that majority of therapists will have a consultation to see if you are the right fit. Because for me personally, my therapist is a Buddhist white woman, but she used to be a performer. So she understands my life as a performer. Like, she has done Broadway, she has done Broadway tours. And so like, that is where we meet in the middle, to where I can then trust her with like the other things. And like, to your point, Jamie, of like not trying to push people into a specific direction of how you particularly feel. When I do have to talk to her about religious stuff, she is very much in the sense of like meeting me where I am and not trying to pull me out of, you know, whatever my religious stuff is. It's just, you know, help guiding into like what my belief systems are. So yeah, that's a great answer. Fantastic. Okay, my next one, this is going to be a whole bunch of medical questions, because of course they have a lot of terms that are brought up in the courtroom, because there are so many doctors that run the gambit. So my first question is, psychotic, epileptic disorder, and schizophrenia. Okay, those 2 terms. I want to know if you thought they explained those terms well throughout their talks in the courtroom, and do those terms make sense as a sensible diagnosis for the symptoms that Emily presents?
So, as a side note, I don't think that psychotic epileptic disorder is even a thing.
Yes. Okay.
So I think that they frame it without getting too in the weeds about like diagnoses in a way where like a layperson can more or less understand what they mean.
Okay.
So if it were real, what I think it would actually be is like 2 different things. I think it would be epilepsy. But there's like different kinds of epilepsy, and there's different like parts of the brain that can be affected. I'm not a neurologist. I'm not a doctor, so I like can't speak too much on it. But I think depending on like where potentially the like the focus of the brain it is could also then trigger like other, not maybe psychotic symptoms, but like maybe sounds or like hearing things. So like I was looking up like the different parts of the brain if like seizures are happening. And it says like with lateral temporal lobe epilepsy, because that area controls hearing, that it can cause like humming sounds, buzzing sounds, hearing a song, hearing voices, altered hearing. Wow. So like because different parts of the brain are affecting different things, if that's the part of the brain that's affected, then those might be the symptoms that you're experiencing. Yeah. But one interesting thing that it also said is, so we had talked in another episode about diagnosing medical issues before diagnosing psychiatric issues.
Yes.
And it says that there are psychiatric disorders that are more common among those with epilepsy, and the highest prevalence occurs with that temporal lobe epilepsy. But the most common comorbidity, which means the most common like combo of disorders of like the medical one and then the psychiatric one, is depression.
Whoa. Okay.
So that's the most common. And then it says, but other ones could include PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, psychosis, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, bipolar disorder, and substance use disorder, which I also thought was just really interesting, that like potentially like how might experiencing seizures also be comorbid with like using substances.
Right.
So I just thought that was I thought it was fascinating that depression was the most prevalent out of all of them. Yeah. It's not necessarily listing all of the like percentages of like what's most common or like where the other ones fall. So it does seem like schizophrenia and like psychosis can potentially be other symptoms. So like this fake diagnosis like makes sense. But major depressive disorder, way more common. Who knew?
I guess because like you don't really think about it on the medical side, like per se. You only are thinking of it from the other side of just like psychological, things.
It totally depends, because there's a lot of stuff in the DSM that
shout out to the DSM.
there are stuff that like are triggered by medical things. So it's like the onset. And another thing is that like sometimes it's really hard to differentiate. Like one of the hardest things I think is trying to figure out like what comes first, or like if there's multiple things at play, what's impacting the other thing. So it's like, but that's why they make you rule out, not they make you, but like that's why the standard is to rule out medical stuff first, because if there is something medical at play, then it's more likely that the medical issue is then causing the psychiatric disorder.
Sure.
For sure. No, that absolutely makes sense. Okay. Well, yes. My other medical question is the drug Gambitrol, and is that a real thing? And if not, what is the real life equivalent of that?
It's not real, according to Scott Derrickson, and we're all like, "Whoa, how could he lie to us about Gambitrol?"
This was supposed to be based on a true story. So
Story.
if Gambitrol isn't real, what am I supposed to believe now?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that one's not real, but there is like a classification of medication for epilepsy, and they're called anti-epileptic drugs, AEDs. And they help control seizures in about 7 out of 10 people. And they
Okay.
work by changing the chemicals in your brain. They do not cure it, but they can stop this. They don't cure epilepsy, but they can stop the seizures from happening.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they all have some sexy names like carbamazepine, lamotrigine, levetiracetam, topiramate, which I have heard of, because here's a fun thing that I've learned as a migraine sufferer, that there's a tiny bit of overlap between migraine medicines and anti-seizure meds or anti-epileptic meds. So brand name Topamax or topiramate. I can't say medication names. That is my downfall.
It's all good.
But Topamax, it treats both epilepsy and migraines.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that would make sense if you're talking about, like things happening like in your frontal
brain.
lobes or whatever lobes in your brain. Yes.
It's wild. Or like
Wow.
one of the other ones, the brand name is Lamictal, the lamotrigine. I can't. It works for epilepsy, but it also can be prescribed for bipolar disorder.
Oh.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like all the intertwinings of these things. I mean, because you're talking about the brain.
Yeah, brains are
Cute.
wild.
This is very wild.
Brains are wild.
So much. Glad that I was never in that field. I could not. If I can't even pronounce it, I would be terrible at it. So.
Oh my god, I once had to like learn all of these names for like all of the major medications. It was on my licensing exam.
That's crazy. I had a hard time just trying to name the parts of the larynx because of those names. Cricoid, thyroid, whatever. So I'm like, I don't
keep
know
going.
what this
Gimme.
is. That's all I got. Esophagus? I don't know.
Good stuff. That's good. But also you like have played characters and memorized whole scripts and performed them time and time again. So
You're
like
right.
Wow. Okay, everyone.
Something.
Nikisha just had this realization. The power of the brain.
I can hold stuff in my brain, guys. It's fantastic.
I'm really happy that we had this epiphany.
Right. At the ripe old age of 34, you learn something new every day.
Every day.
The more you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So my last question is, there was a quote that says, "Crazy people don't know they're crazy." And I think it was because they were talking about how Emily would come to and then realize like she was being possessed. And so that wasn't a case. There wasn't an argument that she was in psychotic or whatever they were saying, because she was like coming to consciousness. So my question to you is, do you think that is a true statement that quote unquote crazy people don't know that they are crazy?
So I don't know if that's what I necessarily agree, but there is this this idea of like ego syntonic versus ego dystonic when thinking about
Big words.
Nikisha, your face. Your eyes just literally fell out of your head.
That was a lot, Jamie. Can you
So-
say those words slower one more
Yes.
time for people
Yes.
like me?
So it's ego syntonic and ego dystonic. And this
Okay.
is how I learned it when I took my DSM class. That basically like and this is like, again, at the super basic level, that certain diagnoses kind of fall in either of these categories. Ego syntonic means like in harmony with the ego. So this is aligned, this is in sync with your sense of self. Ego dystonic means this is unacceptable. Like this is not aligned with like my ego and my sense of self. So like recognizing that like whatever's happening is not a part of me does not feel right. And I hope I'm not fucking these up now, pulling these big terms out of my ass and then saying it all wrong. But so something like anxiety or depression would be ego dystonic, because you're able to recognize that like you are not the anxious experiences that you're having. You are not the depressive symptoms that you're having. Like you are you, and you also might be having experiences like with depression or experiences of anxiety. Like but they're separate. So like you being able to recognize that like something feels off, or like something is not like your regular state, it's not desirable. So that's ego dystonic. On the flip side, the ego syntonic, the things that feel in harmony, typically what I had learned is that like this would be where personality disorders might fit in, where it's you're not necessarily viewing as anything as like being off or wrong with the self, that like if there's a problem, it's like everything around you, like you are fine, this is aligned with my sense of self. So there's an argument to be said that if you are experiencing like delusions and you are comfortable with those delusions, like you don't realize that they are delusions, then you are not questioning whether or not that like doesn't align with your sense of self. That would be ego syntonic. So like it's like consistent with your self-image essentially. So that's kind of what I view them trying to say, where it's like they're like implying that like someone might not have the insight to realize that they're having this experience, which I think is problematic, because there are plenty of people who have experienced psychosis, who have experienced schizophrenia, who like have insight and like are aware. So I don't think that that's like across the board fair. And like with personality disorders, which already have like the wildest amount of stigma. This was just like, this was how they explained it in graduate school. So.
Okay. So syntonic, dystonic. Cool. I dig it. Truly learning all the things today.
That's what happens when I go to a bar. The bartender's like, dystonic or dat tonic?
Hey. But we need like a clown horn.
No.
I love it though. Well, thank you, Jamie. That's a lot. I'm not going to put you through anything else because you've given us so much.
I used all of my brain today.
And that's a lot of brain.
There's nothing left.
Dim brains. So many brains. Okay, guys. Shall we Rotten Tomato this?
Yes.
Rotten to molten.
Rotten to molten.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
All right.
I'm excited to see what this is.
Yeah, what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? Jamie, let's start with you.
I'm going to guess a 73.
All right. Nikisha?
87.
Ooh.
Well, this has a 45% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh my God. They hate it.
The audience score is 60%.
That's still surprising.
Yeah, but the critics' consensus is loosely based on a true story. The Exorcism of Emily Rose mixes compelling courtroom drama with generally gore-free scares and a ho-hum take on demonic cinema.
Ho-hum. Okay.
Ho-hum? Ho-hum?
A ho-hum take. I'm going to use that.
Take. All right. What do you think this has on Letterboxd? For those listening, Letterboxd is a 1 through 5 with decimal points. Nikisha, you want to go first?
Yeah, then I'm gonna say like 2.4.
Interesting. Jamie?
I'm gonna guess like 3 in the middle.
It's a 3, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, how are my Letterboxd scores been so on point?
I don't know.
I'm just
We
trying
love
to
it.
think about like what do people think these days?
Yeah, true.
I'm trying to get in their minds, you know.
I mean, you are the therapist, so I'm trying to give you balloons, but they're not showing up on my.
Ballooning. That's okay.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I will
Give me a
say
heart.
that the most popular review on Letterboxd is amazing. It's this fucking bitch got a full ride to university and she drops out because of what? A little demonic possession? Fuck off.
because in this
Wow.
economy,
Yeah.
you take that demon with you.
Yeah,
Okay?
you deal with the demon. You know how expensive college is these days, Emily?
Get up and go to that 8 a.m. class. You'll be fine. Maybe
Yeah,
the
deal with
demon
the
will learn
droopy
something too.
faces.
They-
Yes.
These actually, the next two most popular ones are actually also spectacular. The next
Great.
one is Christians are out here dramatically nailing their crosses to the walls on the top and bottom of the cross, just so the top nail can fall out and it can swing down to be an anti-cross at peak drama. Just nail it on the sides or something. You know what's going to happen if you nail the bottom.
That is also such a true statement because no one also nails their cross at the top and the bottom. It's either just the top or all around.
Sure.
Mhm.
Can't.
There's no in between.
There's no in between.
And then this other person said, this is pretty boring as a horror movie, but I just love watching women absolutely kill it in a courtroom.
Come on, Suits.
Yeah, for real.
Love it. Obsessed
All
with
right.
it.
Oh my god.
Should we do our 4 S's?
Yes.
Yes.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
The 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. Skulls is how well this movie handled mental health and human behavior. Scares, how scary was it? And then shakes, will it stay with you? Can you shake it off? 1 through 10. Jamie, why don't you start with yours?
Surely. So for skulls, I gave this a 6.5. I feel like, there's some grounded thinking processes happening. I definitely took points off because people don't talk the way that the people in this movie are talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. For scares, I gave this a 3. Because it doesn't scare me as much as it did when I was a wee tot.
Mm-hmm.
But I still don't like the gross faces, and like the contorting is just like so disturbing. For shakes, I can't not give this a high score for the impact that it has had on me since 2005.
For
So
sure.
I'm giving it a 9.
Nice.
Wow.
I think about her contorting. I still wake up at 3:00 in the morning and get scared because I think about this movie. It is like still haunting me to this day.
Yeah.
Nikisha?
That's great. Skulls, I'm going to give it a 6 for the same reasons. Scares, I'm going to give it a 2 for her contorting, but in that dumb classroom scene that I'm mad made me jump. And then shakes, I'm going to give it a 5 because Jennifer's performance was really great. So
cool. I gave it a 6 for skulls, a 2 for scares, and a 7 for shakes.
nice.
I'm just gonna, in terms of suggestions, I already mentioned it. I would suggest watching The Last Exorcism.
That was mine.
Oh, I'll take it.
I literally thought you were going to say, watch White Chicks.
Honestly, well, no, I don't think I can recommend that in the year 2024.
I mean, yeah.
Oh my god. But yeah, I think The Last Exorcism is a good follow-up. I think it was a good follow-up when we watched it immediately after.
Yeah,
but
really
like
was.
I do think that like the themes there's like overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just quickly looked up horror courtroom things and then remembered the Conjuring 3 Devil Made Me Do It moment. So if you want another courtroom horror dilly dally ho hum, if you will, then watch that.
Yeah.
Ho hum.
Fantastic. Well, that wraps up our episode of The Exorcism of Emily Rose. You can follow us on all social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, at Talk Horror Pod, POD. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you find podcasts. So you can, of course, find us on YouTube. Hi, YouTube.
Hey.
You can also find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
Thank you. Woo.
Okay, we can only end this one way. Okay, here it is. Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces past, and I'm home. Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.
Nikisha, you're really
Bye.
God's gunslinger.
Oh, quick draw, fast. Bye, guys.
Bye.